it to the record to the cloud.
Okay, done. I hit record.
Okay. Me too. All right, we'll wait a couple more minutes before I open the room.
Okay, there we go. Did you guys see that our Instagram said that this lecture was happening on Friday, January 24th?
Uh-oh.
I sent the edit in, and then I think this is just like a great example of how this week has been going for everyone. I sent the edit in, and then it got edited to say Friday, January 7th. And now I think it finally says Friday, February 7th. But the flyers all say Friday, February 7th. It's just that one Instagram post.
Okay, I'm gonna spotlight you, Paige,
Okay.
and then I'll transfer it after.
Sounds good.
Tierney, at the end, when we take questions, I don't know if you'll have the chat open. You don't need to worry about reading the questions out. Paige will. But if you do have and you see me submitting a bunch of questions, they're not my questions. I just have students submit questions before each lecture. So,
Great.
yeah,
Great.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna open the room.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. This is week 5 of the Sustainability, Business, and Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. Um, my cat is very excited about it today. We have Tierney Creech with us, who I'll introduce in a moment. But first, I have a few other introductions to make. Um, this is the 4th lecture in the series. Next week, we have Cheryl Wilby from Soulfire Farm lecturing with us at the same time. I highly encourage you to check that one out, especially if you're here today attending this one. 2 lectures cover similar themes of food systems. So definitely stick around next week for that one. And if you missed any of the first 3 lectures in this series, they're all on YouTube. So you can watch those at any time. Uh, my name is Paige Archer. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the assistant director of the Celtic Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership and Transformational Change. We're a public service center here on the Olympia campus of the Evergreen State College. We host this lecture series. We have a couple certificates in the certificate program here, some daytime offerings, and we coordinate internships. So if you're a student who's looking for an internship in business, entrepreneurship, and management, just email us. Our email is celtic@evergreen.edu. Our co-sponsor is Thurston Green Business, which is a business designation that you can get here in Thurston County. It's free and easy to apply. So check out their website if you want more information. Our fiscal sponsor is the Clean Energy Committee, which is a student-led committee with the mission to support clean energy projects and share sustainability strategies here at the Evergreen State College. So thank you, CEC. Okay, Tierney Creech is the owner of Common Ground CSA in Rochester, Washington. She was born and raised in Washington State and began farming in 2008 when she escaped a cubicle in downtown Seattle and never looked back. She moved to Olympia in 2013 to join Common Ground and has owned the business since 2017. She is a former board member of the National Young Farmers Coalition and co-founder of the Washington chapter. Growing vegetables, being outside, and being able to provide food for her community is what makes her happiest. When she's not in the field, she loves exploring nature, crafting, and cooking with her partner and 6-year-old daughter. So, without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Tierney.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I am Tierney. As Paige said, I own and operate Common Ground CSA. We're in Rochester, Washington, on land that's currently owned by the Community Farmland Trust, and located within the ancestral territory of the Coast Salish tribes. So today I'm going to talk about community-supported agriculture as a business model, and how our farm benefits from it, and then a bit about the history and current trends of CSA, as well as how it can be a model for building community and creating change. Thanks to Paige for running my slideshow, and I'll just let you know when to change it, but it is just pictures. So I'll start with a little bit about myself and how I got into farming. So I grew up in Redmond, Washington, and just outside of Seattle, and had a really suburban childhood. And so I'm a first generation farmer, which means that I didn't know any generation of my family that was farming. I didn't have adults imparting farm skills to me as I grew up, and I don't ever stand to inherit any farmland. Um, and so growing up farmer was definitely not a career option that I ever considered. Like, I probably saw a goat acting as a farmer in a Richard Scarry book like Busy Town. But it never translated to a job that you could do in real life until much later. I think a couple of things led me towards farming as a career. I was a kid that went to summer camp and then kept going to summer camp as an adult and worked there for many years. And I think that taught me how to love being outside as much as possible. And then I think it also taught me how to, or that I enjoyed a job that was more of a lifestyle than a 9 to 5. Long hours of something that you love can be great, although the importance of boundaries is there too. Um, and then when I went to college, I was around a lot of people who were vegetarian and vegan, and I started thinking a lot more about where food came from. And I tried to think about when I tried to find food that was grown well or raised well, I just didn't know where to look. And it was definitely out there. I just wasn't connected to it at all. And so I decided to cut out some of those foods. And that meant that I needed to do a lot more cooking for myself, and taught me that I love cooking. And brought all these ingredients into my life. And I would just like look at a tomato and be like, there's seeds in here. And this tomato grew from a seed. And who grew it and where did it come from? And I would just like think through where all of these ingredients came from. And it started to be really interesting to me. And so, in this dreamy sense, I thought, wow, like maybe I could be a farmer, having never been to a farm or actually done any farm work before. But if then fast forwarding several years after college, I did end up working in Seattle, in a cubicle in this department that had no windows because the entire outside of the building was apartments facing out. And then we had this department in the middle. You just didn't even get any daylight. And so I had to plan an escape. And I moved to New Zealand in 2008, to take part in the WOOF program, Willing Workers on Organic Farms. So they connect farmers with volunteers who are willing to do a few hours of work a day in return for room and board. And so throughout that year, I kind of just explored all different kinds of farms and learned more and more that I really, truly enjoyed it. And so like picked more and more serious farms doing larger scale agriculture, and just spent that year learning as much as I could before returning to Washington, where I was really committed to try and make farming a career, which meant that I spent like 4 or 5 years hopping around different parts of Washington state on different types of farms, and finding that transitioning from field crew, seasonal field crew, to farmer with some job security was a little bit tricky. In 2012, a friend gave me the phone number of Julie Puich, who owned Common Ground CSA in Olympia, knowing that Julie was looking for someone to farm with her longer term as she kind of approached retirement age. And so that is the reason that in 2013, I landed here in Olympia and started working with Common Ground CSA. So often when I do these talks, oh, Paige, you could turn the slide just to see a pretty box of vegetables. So those are some of our CSA boxes. That's probably like the second week in June, looking at those garlic scapes and broccoli and fennel. So I often have to ask, like, how many of you have heard of a CSA share? But I know that you guys had that pre-reading, and one of them was quite long, and I'm sure that you all got the basic concept of CSA from that. But I'll talk a little bit about the history of CSA. And the second reading there that you had was really short, but it was from Farming While Black, which is an incredible book, and I'm so excited you guys get to talk to somebody from Soulfire next week. But that one kind of pointed out some of the diverse roots of CSA. It was not invented by a white guy in New England. So that reading talked about Booker T. Watley, who was a professor at Tuskegee University in Alabama, which is a historically Black land-grant college. And he, in the 60s and 70s, was talking about these tenets of successful agriculture. And one of them was his clientele membership program, where a farmer would reach out to community members who would pay up front at the beginning of the season for the opportunity to harvest their vegetables from those fields for the season. So in his idea, they actually were combining what we think of as CSA today with like a U-pick operation, which is pretty cool and not usually combined these days. But so that was happening down in the South. And then at the same time in Japan, they were having a health crisis. There was methyl mercury poisoning in their waterways due to factory runoff. And so the health of food became a big deal. It's said that it was a group of women farmers that created the tiki system, which again was a transparent partnership for just direct sale between farmers and consumers so that people were able to access food that they trusted in a time when like this Minamata disease was a neurological disease caused by this mercury poisoning, and it was terrible. So that was happening in Japan. And then over in Austria, the ideas of Rudolf Steiner, who we know from his work around the Waldorf system, he was talking about his thoughts were inspiring farmers to start cooperative farm models that looked a lot like CSA, where there was a direct relationship between a community and a farm, producers and consumers again. So all of these things were sort of happening. And then the first CSAs in the state started popping up in the late 80s. And a lot of those farms would like point to these other ideas that I just talked about as like some of their inspiration. So then like through the 90s, CSA gained popularity. And then in the 2000s, the local food movement popped up, and we really started to get like tons of CSAs around the country. And it's hard to say exactly how many CSAs there are now, but a 2022 report from the USDA said that 7,000 farms across the US reported having some sales through a CSA program. And then the Community Farmland Trust publishes a Fresh from the Farm guide every year, and they spotlight CSAs in particular. So they had 20 CSAs listed with them for Thurston County in 2024, as well as additional CSAs in Mason and Lewis and Grays Harbor County. So with all this growth, CSA has gone from like a pretty simple subscription box program to just having like so much expanded in so many different ways. So there are a lot of CSAs nowadays that offer customizable boxes. Instead of just getting a box of what's fresh that the farmer packs, maybe the farmer sends out an email and says, here's what's available this week, like pick 8 things. And so then every family's box is different and customized to their diet. There are vegetable CSAs called free choice CSAs, where when you showed up at your pickup site, it would most likely look like a buffet laid out on the tables, and you would bring your bag and within the parameters that the farmer sets, pack the vegetables that you want for that week. CSAs often have like way more share options than just small or large. They might have a mini share. There are CSAs that do a snack share where everything that they pack in those boxes can be eaten out of hand. Um, there are CSA shares that kind of cater to different diets, like maybe a paleo share. And then there's like canning shares for people who just want like a flat of strawberries one week and pickling cucumbers another week. And storage shares in the fall where you just get sort of a bulk delivery of squash and onions and garlic and potatoes and things that you can then keep in your pantry for the winter. And then there's a lot of CSAs who have optional add-ons. Maybe their farm sells eggs and you could add on an egg share if you wanted, or a flour share. Maybe there are farms here on the west side that partner with a group on the east side to do a fruit share in addition to their vegetable shares. Or maybe they know farmers know other local producers and want to add a yogurt share or a bread share. There's so many options. Um, I think the farm that's taken it the furthest in some sense is a farm in New York called Essex Farm that has a full diet CSA. They actually produce all the vegetables as well as like many kinds of meat. They do dairy, which they turn into eggs or turn into cheese and yogurt, and they have eggs. They do grains, which they grind for different kinds of flours. They have dried beans. They have maple syrup. They have almost everything you'd need in order to have a reasonable diet. And so their members pay a pretty large price and they pay per member of their family, but then they're able to go once a week and just on the honor system take whatever food they can realistically eat that week. And it's sort of their way of addressing a broken food system and like supplanting it with something different. Very difficult to replicate, but they've been doing it for about 20 years. And I know other farms have done it as well. And then here in Olympia, we have the Southwest Washington Food Hub, and they're doing a multi-farm box CSA. So wintertime, not very many farmers are running their CSA programs, but the Food Hub is a farmer-owned group. So farmers pay a membership fee and are able to sell their food through the Food Hub. The Food Hub is then taking on the responsibility of marketing the food. The farmer tells them what they have that week, and then the Food Hub has an online system where customers can purchase food, and they do the advertising and they do the packing and the delivery, and the farmer just gets a list of what sold that week and delivers it in bulk to the Food Hub. And so they have a multi-farm share this time of year that customers can purchase. And so your share will have a mix of vegetables from all different local farms. And then there's CSAs that don't really have anything to do with vegetables directly. There's flower farms that are just doing flower CSAs. There are meat CSAs. There's a chicken CSA down at the market in Olympia. You can even have a wool CSA where you'd be signing up to get a share of the yarn produced from the farmer's flock that year. So as CSA has grown in popularity and expanded in what it provides and means, so has the infrastructure around CSA. There are e-commerce platforms, obviously, that support farm sales, and there's CSA specific farm software, sales software that caters directly to farmers who are sort of managing these complex CSA programs and what they need. There's even a National CSA Day. It's February 28th coming up. And groups like the CSA Innovation Network, which is sort of a resource base with programs and tools that are meant to help further CSA, promote them. And they have a CSA week, also the end of February. And they provide farmers with kind of like media packets where you can just plug in your own farm picture and whatever details, but they've created a lot of these posts and advertising for you. And then they have this whole week where everyone tries to get a lot of information about their CSA out there and just like uplift that in the view of people who might be CSA consumers. And so that is right at the time of year when CSA farmers are looking to sign up and get their membership filled. So we could switch the slide just for fun. And I think we'll see a picture of our fields in the spring. So I'll talk about Common Ground Farm or Common Ground CSA more specifically. We're a little bit unusual in that our CSA program is 100% of our income. We're just a CSA farm. We don't do markets or restaurant sales or wholesale or anything. And that's the way that it has been from the start. But Common Ground was started in 1990. So one of the early CSAs in Washington. Julie Puich and several other women started it that very first year with 50 members and a requirement that each family actually come help on the farm twice a year. And then through the years, Julie continued the farm with like so many field workers and apprentices and co-workers. From the beginning, the goal of the CSA was to provide a quality of vegetables that wasn't readily available to the community and to support as much of the community as possible. So finding ways to support people at a lower income level. And so the CSA from day one has always been a sliding scale program. It also was the CSA accepted food stamps from the very early days. And that was because Julie spent a long time actually with the agency explaining to them what a CSA was and why they needed to add it to the list of acceptable things to buy with food stamp benefits. And so for the first 25 years, the farm was based on the west side of Olympia, actually not far from Evergreen. About 2/3 of our members picked up on site and joined farmers for potlucks and harvest parties. I joined the farm in 2013 and started a long transition process with Julie as she moved closer to retirement and I stepped into an ownership role. And so for quite a lot of years, we worked together as farm partners in the field. While on paper, she was the business owner and I was an employee. And then in 2017, we sort of flipped that and I became the business owner. But we still worked as farm partners until just a year or two ago when Julie officially kind of emotionally retired. She joins us for harvest and packing CSA twice a week because that's the most fun job on the farm and does some greenhouse watering on the weekends and some tractor work, but otherwise gets to do what she wants with her time. So in 2017, we moved off of our historic farm site in Olympia and we spent quite a few years divided between two properties. Julie had landed on some land in Rochester where we could create fields and we'd had a long time satellite field in Maytown that we expanded. And so we operated on these two fields that were about 20 minutes apart. And it was logistically a bit difficult. But then in 2021, the Community Farmland Trust purchased a beautiful 29-acre parcel in Rochester that was part of the historic James family farm. And it was right next door to Julie's land. And so we were able to secure a lease on that property. We have a 99-year lease, a heritable lease that provides us with a lot of security as farmers and brings our operational into one site, which is fantastic. So our CSA program is, like I said, it's like one of the most basic CSAs out there. We're only a CSA farm. It's 100% of our income. So a lot of farms like to diversify their income and they might have a CSA program, but then also go to farmers markets or do restaurant sales or have wholesale accounts. For the members of our farm, when they're purchasing a CSA, it means that they're buying like a true share of the farm because there aren't other places that those vegetables go, unless there's like extreme abundance, in which case it does go to the food bank. So a couple of slides. These are our fields. The one right now is our fields in the spring. And if you look in the right corner, you can see somebody has already started cutting and bunching the spinach. And other folks in the background are harvesting other foods for the day. And then if we go to the next slide, you see some lovely carrots getting washed on the spray table. And then one more slide. And you can see we've got all the boxes for that morning's harvest set up in the barn. And we, at that point, have moved all the vegetables from the field through the wash station over to this barn, and we are packing all the shares. And so all our shares are identical. We don't offer any customization. We do have free boxes at our site. So when I have more food than I can realistically put in a share, extras will go into the free box. Or if there's really good food that's just not perfectly beautiful and there's enough in the boxes, I'll put extras in those free boxes. And then our community, when they come to pick up, know that they can trade things around and put their food that they have in their box that they just know they're never going to eat can go in that free box for somebody else who loves it to pick it up. I had a friend who picked up in South Capitol with us for years, and she never knew who it was, but somebody every single week would pick up before them and put their 2 to 4 beets in the box, and she would get them every week and was so grateful. And then you can see that's a peak, that must be peak tomato week on the farm. Those are large shares, and those are just beautiful August boxes there. So we currently feed about 120 families. We're growing just about 2 acres of vegetables. We sell 2 share sizes. We've got a small share and a large share to accommodate different size families, but realistically just to accommodate the different appetites people have for vegetables. Sometimes they ask, like, how many people does this share feed? And it's hard to say. I have families of 4 eating a small share and telling me that they're like literally turning green. It's too many veggies. And I have families of 2 eating a large share and then supplementing with extra veggies. So it's really variable. Our prices are still sliding scale, and we offer optional payment plans. So if you were going to buy a small share from the farm this season, our price range that we would set out would be $700 to $1,000. And then in the middle there, I pick a break-even price that represents the average that I need to get for each box in order to meet our budget that year. So that's about $825 for us. We don't ask our members any questions about their income, but we do just communicate with them that members who can pay at the high end of our sliding scale know that they're then subsidizing shares for folks at a lower income level. And they're also helping raise the wages of the farmers. And then folks who wouldn't be able to buy vegetables at our break-even price are able to buy vegetables, have access to those at a lower income level. So our members are signing up right about now. As soon as I click send on our registration opening email this weekend, they will start signing up, and we will start getting payments in. And then their first box will be delivered mid-May. Our season goes 25 weeks, so it will go through the end of October. And then we have one optional add-on of a winter share for 3 weeks in November for some of those winter vegetables. It's one size only, and we only accept 40 members in that program. So we just harvest once a week for that one, which fits really well with the time of year when us as farmers are really ready to start slowing down. Yeah, and then we have pickup sites we deliver to town. So we have pickup sites in 5 neighborhoods around Olympia, as well as a neighborhood in Tumwater. And then we do pickups at our 2 farm sites in Maytown and Rochester. So CSA works really well for us as a business because we are getting all of our payment ahead of time, or almost all of it. We offer these payment plans. So we have some members who pay monthly throughout the year, but the bulk of our income comes in between February and April. And we also just we know how much we're going to make over the year from the beginning of the season. Traditionally, so right now at this time of year, as the money starts to come in, is when I need to be buying all of the seeds for the year, um, buying fertilizers and soil amendments, putting the first of our crew comes on because it takes months to get the vegetables ready before the boxes are sold. So I have all of these expenditures, but I'm also starting to receive the payment for the boxes that I'll be producing in the future. So traditionally, farmers would go to the bank this time of year and get a loan so that they could actually like buy everything they needed to grow the food and then pay it back when they actually sold that food. And we don't have to do that at all because of the CSA system. The other thing about CSA is that the customers are accepting some of the risks inherent with agriculture and sharing those risks with the farmer. We have a lot of experience with CSA, and so it is rare that those risks are visible in our CSA boxes, but there are times we had a phosphorus deficiency in our tomato house this year that didn't become visible until, 6 months after we planted the seeds in the greenhouse. The tomatoes weren't ripening correctly. And there were still tomatoes in the CSA boxes, but it wasn't a great tomato year. And, it was a great year for many other things. And so that all kind of like works out. Tomatoes are such a high priced product that for a farmer at the market that didn't have their tomatoes succeed, that would make a big dent in their income for the year. And then with climate change coming on or continuing, we just have the risks of like working with nature in the way that we do seem a little bit more real. Like the heat dome that we had in 2021, where we got to 113 degrees on the farm. Something that like, we just had never experienced anything like it. And I had CSA members who like pretty cheerfully assumed the season was over from then on. And it wasn't. Our box the next week looked the same as it would have. We had a little bit of delay on some things like beans because pollen dies at a certain temperature, like above 95. So beans were a week or two late, but we were able to keep everything alive. But just knowing that we have this system in place is nice. On a personal note, like CSA satisfies my need to be engaged with the community and to have a relationship with the folks that we are feeding. That is what keeps me going. And additionally, CSA for me feels like a slightly more responsible way to participate in capitalism. Yeah, like we obviously are participating as business owners in a capitalist society, but this feels like a slightly more responsible way. Yeah. So we just did a survey of all of our customers for the first time in a while, and one of the questions we asked them was why they choose CSA. And the top reasons for them were supporting small scale farms and supporting small scale businesses. Close behind was environmental stewardship. Cool. So a couple of ways that we on our farm are consciously working to build a community around our farm. So all of our pickup sites are in neighborhoods. They are at CSA members' houses. Some of those, I would say more than half of those sites have been with us for 35 years. Like they were our pickup sites from day one. And I haven't added a new pickup site in probably like 10 years. So it's fun that we have some staying power there. But our members are often able to find a CSA pickup site that's right in their community that they can walk to or bike to, that they have their neighbors around, and people meet up at the drop sites and can talk and create community in that way. We also do a newsletter once a month that we send out pictures and stories from the farm and let them know what's going on. And we also try really hard to provide a lot of support with recipes, especially on some of the vegetables that people find to be a little trickier. Let's see, we could switch the slide. So we have a spring potluck every year for our members to come out to the farm, and they can talk to farmers and get a tour of our fields and share food and talk about recipes and all of that. This picture is on our new farm. We've got a historic apple orchard from the original farm that it looks like people are standing in there and looking out at the hay pastures that go to the river. This looks very 2021 with the masks, or 2022. So we have that moment every year where people can join us on the farm and actually see where their food is coming from. And some years we also have a fall harvest party as well, but we kind of gauge our energy level as farmers each year when September rolls around. Let's see, we can switch again. So that looks like another farm potluck. And when this timing is right, we love to do taste tests of the vegetables. You can see a lot of tomatoes there. That was a good tomato year. And we labeled each tomato, had people test them, and then had clipboards for them to write their thoughts about each variety down, which was really fun. Let's see, we can change the slide again. Ooh, yeah, that's a harvest party, but we made a screen and it was like BYO t-shirt or scrap of fabric or canvas bag, and people could print Common Ground gear, which was really fun. And one more slide. We did a potato digging party every fall, and it's been a couple of years, but we're hoping to start doing that again, where members could come and help with our annual potato harvest. That picture is an oldie but a goodie. You can see the pickups in the back. But yeah, just an easy way for folks to come and get involved in a little piece of the production of their food. Nice. So let's see. We can change it one more time so you can see another pretty picture of the fields. Lovely. And I'm just going to end by talking about a couple of examples of CSA farms that are kind of going further on the relationship between producer and consumer than we are, and that are pretty inspiring. So in Germany, one of the things that a lot of CSAs do, and I've heard about a farm in the States doing this, but I don't remember which one, but it's much more common in Germany, and they call it the bidding round. So in that version of a CSA, they must have a really stable membership, because at the beginning of this season, they get all of the members in a room, and the farmer does a presentation of what his budget for the year or her budget for the year is, including their own wages. And the members get to see exactly what the farmer's costs are and what the farmer will be making for the season. And then they're able to see what the price of a box will be with that many members. And each member writes down what they would pledge to pay for that box. So there is that understanding that this is what a box costs, but if you are lower income or able to support at a higher level, you can write a number that's different. And then all that goes in, and they see like, okay, did we hit the budget? Did we meet it? And if they don't, then they go back to the drawing board and everybody writes down a number again, and they try again. And so that's just and like taking it to another level of the transparency between farmer and consumer and the relationship between them. And really it's like, okay, these are people helping other people, either by providing food or providing income. And then the other system that I think is really inspiring is something called solidarity payments. There is a woman in Amsterdam named Elske Hageratz, and she calls herself a peasant farmer. She spent 8 years as a CSA farmer, And at the end of 8 years, she was making half of the minimum wage, even with the efficiency that experience over those years had brought to her system. And when she talked to other farmers, it was similar for them, that just like farmers were making such an incredibly low income around her. And so she thought about like, okay, if I wanted to get up to minimum wage, I could double the price of my vegetables. But if I just double the price of my vegetables, like half of my customer, or maybe all of my customers are going to walk away because they can go to the supermarket. And it just doesn't seem reasonable. And so she went on and like talked to as many farmers as she could and gathered ideas. And she came up with this idea of solidarity payments. So what she did is she decided to detach the idea of vegetables having a cost. And she said, okay, the vegetables don't cost anything. Vegetables are free. But if you look at the hours across the season that it takes to produce them, from admin and marketing through seeding and weeding and irrigating and washing and packing and delivering, she could tell you that like this box that she's handing you of your weekly vegetables took 1 hour of time. And so the vegetables are free, but like what wage do you think I should be making? And ideally that wage that you think that you're offering, it should match up with your own wage. And I think that this system does two really amazing things at the same time. It's increasing the farmer's wage. The farms that have adopted this, mostly around Europe, are seeing that the farmers just making for the first time like a reasonable income. But at the same time, whereas like on our system, a box might cost something, and with our sliding scale, we can support a little bit lower. Like she's created a system where she can support anybody at any income level because there are maybe like a dairy farmer that's also making an extremely low wage in her neighborhood, but there's also lawyers who are making hundreds of dollars an hour. So that system to me is very inspiring. And for her, that was like a 3-year transition where she talked about it and communicated with her members for a year. And then the next year said, okay, there's 2 ways to pay this year. There's sliding scale or there's solidarity payment. And then from the 3rd year on, it was only the solidarity payment as a method. So yeah. So let's see. I think that's what I have for you today. And there's that last slide and my contact info. But yeah, we can do questions if you want. Ooh, in the agricultural field. I always think that if you are able to go make your mistakes with somebody else first, like go and if you could work for another farmer and learn from them, that is really important. I think when I started farming, we had this idea that like, oh my gosh, we could get an apprenticeship and they'll teach us for free, but we weren't making any money. And that seemed normal. And I wouldn't suggest that anybody do that anymore. You can find a job on the farm if you don't have very much experience, and you should be paid for your work regardless, I believe. So I would go get a job on a farm if you can. There are also, I know Evergreen has an organic farm program. And there are also, I'm sure that you guys can find, there's business education programs that support agricultural learning as well. I do not have a great answer for that one. It's something that we have thought about, but not enough, and not like I can't say that I myself have made any movements on that. but I think it's important. I don't have a good answer for that one.
Also, someone threw out an answer in the chat to questions about Indigenous land back movement and things that CSA modeled farms can keep in mind. Just that there are some Indigenous-led land trusts out there, and they're not specific to agriculture, but it is part of the land back movement. And there's a link to one that I believe is in California. Yeah, so San Francisco area around there. Thank you for that.
Well, within my business model, education and engagement of my community members is sort of how we keep going. Like we need them in order to do what we're doing. And so every time I write a newsletter or host a potluck or find another way to one-on-one like build a relationship with a member, I know that I am making my business stronger, so that if there ever is a time when when something goes wrong and we need that support of our community, it's like I think of it as like continuing to put to money in the bank, those relationships, so that we have that if we ever need it. Well, I was really lucky in that I didn't have to start my farm from scratch, which, is a conscious decision that I made. And so for me, the most effective way in finding a path to farm ownership that was an alternative to that was just having a community of farmers. So the Young Farmers Coalition um, is where I found that community. For the first couple of years, I didn't really know any young people farming. And then an organization called the Greenhorns put on this big young farmers party on Vashon Island, and it ended up that like hundreds of people came. And from there, a core group of us decided to start an organization. And so I then like traveled around in the winters and to all different communities in Washington and talked about farming and how to like bring young people who were farming together so they knew there were other people in their network to reach out to. And so to me, that was huge. That's where all of my close connections within farming came from. And that's how I ended up here, is that like one of those friends was like, hey, I'm in Olympia. I know this person. I think you guys would be a good fit. Yeah. The Young Farmers Coalition kind of started in New York, the National Young Farmers Coalition, probably like 2010. And at the same time, this group of us in Washington had just had this amazing party and decided we needed to find a organized way to maintain those connections and foster those connections. So we kind of started at the same time. And I was able to go to New York for a Young Farmers Conference and make some connections out there, which is how I ended up on the board of the National Young Farmers Coalition from the start and was there for about 10 years. And so the Washington chapter, I'm not exactly sure what they're up to these days. They took some time to kind of reconsider things, but the National Young Farmers Coalition is one of the coolest organizations I have ever seen. I stepped down from their board like 6 years ago, but I have been, staying in touch and watching what they are up to. They are working to support, they're working to create a reality where it's possible to be a first career farmer. So somebody not coming in with a whole bunch of money or a retirement plan that they can blow on a farm and all the equipment should be able to become a farmer. So they're working on networking, but a lot of policy change and community building And they also have worked extremely hard at transitioning their leadership to a majority BIPOC organization. So youngfarmers.org, they have a beautiful website talking about their work, and they're doing incredible work. And if you are a farmer, you can join as a member for, I think, $25 a year is the low end. But you get all of these discounts at all the places where you need to be buying your seeds and implements and tools and all of that, and even your farm clothes and shoes. And I saved so much money. So definitely check them out. Yeah. So as a farmer, I have a couple of things that I can do. I mean, it's limited, but there is a big push around with the smaller seed breeding, people breeding seeds, looking at varieties that are specifically able to withstand extremes. So at times extreme heat, but there's varieties that they're breeding for more extreme cold. So I'm always on the lookout for for those new seeds that are being bred, or old seeds that are being bred, that have those qualities, and making sure that when I'm making my crop plan, I'm incorporating some of those. It's kind of like a way of hedging my bets. So seed varieties is one way. I think learning more about water. And so when we moved to this new property, we don't have water rights, which means we aren't able to pull water straight out of the river onto our fields. We have a limited amount of water we're allowed to pull out of a well. And so while we used to overhead water some crops, we have moved to almost entirely drip tape, which are like, black pieces of drip tape that you're just doing one drip at a time, usually like every 6 inches straight into the ground. And so you lose a lot less water. So that has been, that supports our move toward being more resilient in climate change, but then also just like understanding exactly how much water a plant needs and not overwatering, and really tuning into that. There's also a lot of movement around dryland vegetables, and the idea that certain varieties and certain types of vegetables can grow with very little water with certain methods. You need to know what you're doing. But there are farmers that are growing those and providing more information about that. So that's one thing that we're always kind of keeping our eyes open to. And then also thinking about no-till farming, where you're disturbing the soil a lot less. And we're always thinking about adding organic matter, and like looking at things like biochar that just like have a water holding capacity. So thinking about that as well. Yeah, there are some things. Good question. Traditionally, the CSA members are not an official part of making business decisions for us. I have heard of CSAs that have sort of a core group of members who they do look to for guidance and also for like some decision making. And that's not typically how we run. I did just do like an in-depth survey of all of our CSA members to kind of see just CSA is difficult because you can have one family who thinks that like they just get more green beans than any person should ever be asked to eat, and then another family who asks you for more green beans. And so if it's kind of 50-50, you think you're kind of doing it right, you're hitting it right. But I was trying to get to like what were their core vegetables, what do they consider staples, what are they buying extras of even when they're in season on the farm, and like seeing if we could make changes according to that. but yeah, they're not like an actual part of our business decisions. I know a lot of our CSA members personally, and so when I have questions for myself as a business owner, I have people that I can reach out to as CSA members and kind of do like mini focus groups with. It's scary. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. I just got to talk to a bunch of county commissioners who came out to our farm, and that was one major thing that I talked to them about. We're losing so much farmland. The average age of farmers is like 65, and that's the average age. Um, I think that I think that anything we can do to get people to understand what producing food is like is important. I participate in an apprenticeship program or an internship program with Avanti High School where we get an intern for the spring through the high school, and they get to just like take part in our farm days. And I think that's so important. I wish that everyone could get exposure to being on a farm for a while, because not everybody is going to enjoy the lifestyle of being a farmer. But some people are. And so we need to expose everybody. So we find that small group of people who is willing and excited to do this job. And then everybody else that's like, wow, that's not for me, has like a really hands-on understanding of what food production is like. Um, I think we have a lot of great educational programs like the Evergreen Farm and other agricultural educational programs all over the country. And the problem is that not that there's not interest, but that leaving those programs, there's not a way to either start a farm or work on a farm that is sustainable economically, usually. So I think finding creative ways to um, either support farmers starting farms through federal or state programs, or like this solidarity payment idea, like finding creative ways to create consumer and producer relationships that increase the viability of farm businesses. But like it's a huge problem.
Tierney, I'm gonna wrap it up there. And I want to take a moment to thank you for the work that you do out in the community, the work that you do for the farming industry as a whole, and just for taking your time to share your story and your expertise with us today. I'm going to invite the audience members to either put thank yous in the chat or use their emoji functions to express our gratitude. Tierney, thank you so much for joining us.
For having me.
Yeah,
Thank
awesome.